Okay, I think we're live. So, yes, we are. Okay, hello and welcome to our weekly Wednesday night live stream. I'm your host, Dana Morningstar, and this is a live stream that I try and do every Wednesday evening around 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So, if you are new here, welcome. And if you are returning here, welcome. If you would also, if you'd like to be notified when I go live, you can text the words Dana Live, all one word, to the number 22999 and be notified. So with that said, how is everybody doing? How's everybody's week? Monica's here, Jack is here, UNA, Crystal Mountain, Kalina, Colleen, Kenneth. Hello, hello. Jack says, Huffle Mom is delayed, but I'm really sorry. That means her reminders will be delayed too. That's, yeah, that's no problem. I hope, yeah, that's no problem. I hope she's delayed for, uh, you know, for good reasons and not for bad reasons. Monica says, I'm doing okay. It's been a busy week. Everyone is working from home here. Yes, that can be a challenge for sure. Kakalina says, don't forget June 1st is Narcissistic Abuse Awareness Day. Yes, this is true. I need to think about what I'm going to be doing on that day. Thank you for mentioning that. And follow Mistress Nurtures here. She says, hello. Well, hello. UNA says, I hate to say it, but my week has not been going great, but not to worry, it will get better. Well, that's good. And Jack said, terrible. Things are going terrible. Oh boy, what's going on, Jack? Monica says, COVID has really taken a toll on my mental health and has made my anxiety worse. Is that something that you would like to kind of elaborate on? I know that's kind of a personal question. You don't have to answer that here in the chat, but yeah, I think there's a lot of people struggling with mental health challenges anyhow, but then kind of with COVID making them a lot worse, depression and anxiety being two of those for lots of reasons, right? I mean, the world really radically changed, and a lot of parents had kids at home full time, and then they were trying to work or work from home, and just kind of being under the same roof with everybody and not really having personal time and finances and just the uncertainty of the world. It's scary, anxiety inducing for sure. I guess for those of you that have been struggling with anxiety in general or anxiety related to COVID, are there any tips that you would like to share about how you've been handling that? Oh, well, thanks, Camilla. She says, hi, Dana. It's great to see you. Well, it's good. It's good to be here. And thank you for that. And it's good to quote unquote see you guys too, even though it's just in chat. It's nice to see familiar screen names, I guess. Let's see. Lee Ann says, my narcissist is really giving me a hard time today, keeping it minimal contact because we have a daughter, but some days he really starts up with his crap. I try to keep it minimal, but he just really tries to trigger me for a response. So yes, that's really difficult when somebody, it's hard to keep our cool when somebody is actively pushing our buttons. But the good news with that is that you're aware that he's pushing your buttons. So awareness, kind of the first step in any in the process of change, is always awareness. So kind of knowing that to some extent can help contribute to some emotional distance of, okay, like I don't need to engage in this. He's doing this because he's trying to start a fight or he's trying to rile me up. And um, yeah, like I need to not give him what he's looking for, which can be very difficult because I think a pretty normal human response is we want to defend ourselves, especially if we're being attacked. And but yeah, kind of realizing, nope, that's what he's going for. His person's, if he's stirring the pot and it's intentional, then the only kind of the best winning move, or the only winning move, is to not play, is to just back away. And frankly, that, and for a lot of people that can be difficult because it can feel like, well, I don't want him to, or I don't want this person to think that they're winning, or that they've somehow gotten the best of me, or whatnot. But really, oftentimes no reaction is the best move that you can make, because that can just drive them up a wall when they're trying to provoke you and it's not working. To just stay cool, calm, and collected, and to just disengage. Yeah, it can work wonders. Yeah. And Monica says, yeah, I'm still recovering. She says, yeah, but now we know that someone was pushing our buttons. Yes. And that level of awareness is such an important first step, because for so long, I think a lot of people think, well, um, surely this this other person is going to want to find a solution to whatever problem that we have, right? Like they're going to want to work as a team. They're going to want to get things figured out, that they kind of have the same motivations in terms of the relationship that I do. And it, so for a lot of people, it doesn't even cross their, it's not even on their radar that another person like might not want that the other person might find might not be team oriented at all. Instead, it's the opposite. They're very kind of what's known as being domination driven, or kind of getting power over on the other person. And they do that by creating these kind of impossible solutions or situations where it's win lose. And yeah, so kind of disengaging from that when you realize, okay, there is no this where we're at right now with this situation is it's completely off track. And it's at least at this point, we're not going to be able to go for anything that's like a win-win type situation. So I just need to disengage. We need to couch this subject. We need to do something different. Maybe if it's with court related stuff, get a mediator involved, get an attorney involved, get a therapist involved, get some sort of neutral third party in the mix. So just because, I guess, realizing that you can set the pace. So you don't need to stand there and try to scream into the wind, which is what it feels like, trying to get through to them of, okay, this is why this is a problem, or this is why this behavior is not okay. Like you don't need to, if you've already said it, then you don't need to keep hammering the point home. The issue there isn't communication, I guess is what I'm saying. So yeah, only communication solves communication issues, but sometimes when issues are more complicated than that, and it has nothing to do with communication, it's the person, they're hurt or they're angry, or it's about power and control, that kind of thing. Like improving your communication isn't going to work. Like it's best to just take a step back and disengage. Oh, well, I'm so glad. Leanne says, I've been in weekly therapy since May, but didn't leave and move out until mid-October. However, your videos have helped me tremendously. I can't thank you enough. Oh, you are so very welcome. And I hope that kind of this next chapter in your life I hope it's the best one yet. And I know it's probably incredibly difficult. October wasn't that long ago, and there's still, I know, a lot of things to figure out, and it's kind of figuring out what a new normal looks like. But, it's putting one foot in front of another, and yeah, I guess just tripling up on your self-care during this time. It's really important because you've been through a lot. So Gary says, "Hi, Dana." Well, hi, Gary. Welcome. Oh, 100%. Truth Talks says, "Oh, that disengaging is so much easier said than done. Uh, my narcissistic abuser has quote unquote reappeared. I haven't sold myself out, but some days it is really difficult to remain passively detached." Absolutely. And this is this love, having kind of maintaining that level of emotional detachment and kind of remaining kind of cool, calm, collected, all of that. it is it's incredibly difficult. And um, it takes time and practice. And even with that, there's still going to be moments where you're probably going to handle things in a less than ideal manner. So that's where I think compassion and grace comes into play, giving that to yourself. Of Because even if we know, okay, I know I'm going to I'm going to see this person there. They have kind of this high conflict personality. Um, and I'm preparing myself to get my buttons pushed, and you know what you're walking into, and so you're doing all these things to prevent from that happening, and then it still does. So it's okay, you're human like the rest of us. So I guess kind of, back to that compassion and grace component. And then um and then also realizing like you can take a break. One of my, I think, favorite and easiest techniques with this kind of thing is realizing that you don't need to just sit there or stand there and try to stay disengaged. If you're really struggling with things, I would encourage you to figure out ahead of time, how are you going to get some distance or some breathing room. So let's say, for example, if this, it's a family event or a court event or something where you're going to be in the same room with this person for potentially a couple hours, thinking about, okay, if my anxiety or my anger starts to rise past, let's say, like the level, like a five or greater, then that's a sign of, okay, I need to get some distance, like now, not try to stay here and just keep cool, but really just get some distance. And so um, getting up and going to the bathroom is one of my go-tos. It's great. People tend to not follow you. You can close the door, you can lock the door, you can take time in there. You can, wash your hands. You can put cold water on the back of your neck. Just breathe. Just take some time and breathe. So kind of coming up with some different strategies like that if you're really struggling with disengaging. Um, Oh, well, I'm glad that they help. Leanne says, "I listen to old podcasts you made every morning on my way to work and every night on my way home. Thank you for everything." You are so very welcome. And yeah, I'm glad. I'm glad that they help. Let's see. Scrolling here. Joey says, "I just don't get how my father and stepmother can act like they never did anything wrong." Let me scroll up and see if I'm missing part of that question here. He says, "Oh, what is another way to handle my situation? I don't go out of my way to speak with my father or stepmother. They're both toxic energy, but they act like I'm supposed to, quote unquote, check in every so often." Okay, that was the first part of it. And he says, "I just don't get how my father and stepmother can act like they never did anything wrong." So, well, I guess I'm going to assume that you're over 18. Um, and so that kind of changes things, because it's, if you're out of the house, and it kind of makes it easier to have boundaries when you have your own space. So this can be challenging with family. I think family especially. Sometimes when family acts like they care, like, "Oh, we're so worried about you. We haven't heard from you in forever. And, don't be a stranger. Please check in, and we worry," and all of this. And you're sitting here thinking, "Oh my gosh, they just did all of this horrible stuff, and it's like nothing happened." Or now they're acting the part of like this concerned parent, or that we have some sort of close relationship and we don't. Like, this is so strange. My guess would be, if you're on the receiving end of behavior that doesn't match up um, with actions, like if they're just kind of sweeping everything under the rug, basically, then they're more often than not minimizing or denying their part in things. Um, if you're not even getting that, or if they feel entitled by the further hurtful behavior, because some people, I think a lot of people, a lot of abusive people have very imbalanced boundaries. So it can be that sense of entitlement of, well, yeah, we used your college fund, but we paid for everything for the first 18 years. So um, you know you're not, we don't owe you anything. Or do you see what I'm saying? Like that, just kind of that sense of entitlement to do whatever they want to do, which can just be kind of jaw dropping. Or, "Oh yeah, we know you were getting disability checks or social security checks, or grandpa left you something in his will, but we used that because we needed to use it for bills, and therefore you shouldn't be upset about it." It's like, wow, okay. um, but at the end of the day, the reality is, it's you set the pace of that relationship and of all relationships. So regardless of what they're pressing you for, "Oh, Joey, we really want you to check in more often. We want to see you on Christmas and all this." If that's not something that you want to do, then you don't need to do it. Or if they want to, or you might decide, "You know what? Okay, yeah, I'm upset with them. Like, there's a lot of toxic energy, but I still want to have some relationship with them." And they're saying, "Oh, Joey, come home for Christmas. We want to see you, blah, blah." Letting them know, or if okay, I could go over there for maybe Christmas dinner. I could be there for like 2 hours, and that's your max. Then that's what you do. And then you just kind of bow out graciously. So, um, it can be really infuriating when somebody's caused you harm and there's no apology for it, there's no accountability for it, there's no discussion of it. It's just sort of left there. It's the elephant in the room. That can be very difficult to move forward. And so again, that's going to be up to you, with if and when you decide to ever bring that up with them. So, you know, it's every relationship's different, and that's completely up to you. Okay, so let's see. Let me scroll down here. Oh. Um, let's see. Cannonball says, "What is the difference between a narcissistic rage and sociopathic rage?" Well, it's I guess I've never really heard of sociopathic rage, but my guess would be it's the same thing. So it's coming from that same place of kind of, it's either coming from a place of ego injury, uh, like you're setting the boundary. Like for a pretty common example would be, let's say you have your own business and your accountant has been embezzling funds from you for 10 years, and you finally find out and you fire him, and he gets absolutely outraged, like you've done him wrong. Right? What do you mean you're going to fire me? I'm the best thing that's ever happened to this company. Duh, 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 duh. I didn't steal money from you. You can't prove it. I'll see you in court. You're going to ruin my reputation. And they just get all kinds of defensive or outraged. So that's one way that can come across. Or another way, if you're, leaving a relationship is very common. If they're not getting their way, or if, yeah. Or if they're perceiving you setting a boundary as a rejection. So let's say, for example, this person's been cheating on you since day one, but then you are the one that decides, I can't handle this anymore. I need to leave the relationship. And they fly into a rage. How could you leave me? I'm the best thing that ever happened to you. I bet you were cheating all along. They start projecting. They're blaming you for everything that they've been doing. It gets very confusing. They become violent. Um, so it's that unpredictable rage, but it comes from, often, I think more often than not, it seems very disproportionate to the situation at hand. And I think oftentimes it's unexpected. So it's a way they've suffered some sort of ego injury, and they go on the attack. So, and with narcissists and sociopaths, it's, at the core of all sociopaths is a narcissist. So, but not all narcissists are sociopaths. It's still, I wouldn't get too caught up in that. They can both be equally damaging and have very similar behavior. So trying to kind of parse out the differences, it's really kind of splitting hairs. At the end of the day, if somebody has really damaging behavior, especially if it's, destructive or potentially deadly, your best is to get out of harm's way. So let's see. Let me scroll here. Claire says, is saying, I'm sorry you feel that way, a detached response to a narcissist? Yes, but I wouldn't recommend that response. So, and the reason why is because whenever anybody says that, it feels like we're almost blaming the other person, especially if they feel like we've done them wrong. So if that person's upset and we're saying, I'm really sorry you feel that way, it's basically saying, I don't agree with how you're feeling, but I'm sorry that you're hurt. And that can cause even more anger in a person. So saying something, and again, it's really going to depend on the situation and the context and everything else, but saying something along the lines of, yeah, it's really clear. Like, you sound hurt and angry. So just kind of reflecting back to them how they sound. Like, and again, I guess it's totally going to depend on the situation. You sound really hurt. You sound really angry. I don't know, something like, we've been through a lot. You want just kind of a neutral. The goal here isn't to be their therapist. It's not to be their confidant. It's not to make them feel okay. The goal here is just to try to do damage control, to get some distance, to realize, okay, especially if they're dangerous or destructive. So which can be infuriating because, I mean, more often than not, victims, targets of abuse are the ones that are blamed by the abuser. It's like, look at what you made me do. You made me do this. You made me so angry. You made me throw you down the stairs. You caused this. And so trying to kind of, be cool, calm, and collected, and assign appropriate accountability and talk about boundaries and all of that with somebody who is not owning their part in things, and they've already shown that they're very unpredictable and unhinged. I would not recommend that at all. So yeah, it's just so depends on the context. Oftentimes I find some degree of validating and then getting some distance. Kind of, yeah, you sound really upset. Like that's been a lot. You're just keeping it vague and then just getting distance. Let's see. Okay, yeah. Monica was saying with her parents, she says, yeah, like my parents used my name to take out a student loan for my older sister that I was not even aware of. I was not even aware of it until I began working for people, and people started calling me for loan payments. Right. So that level of such a boundary violation. I mean, it's egregious, right? This would never fly with anybody, and it doesn't fly with anybody. It's illegal. It's identity theft. And for a person that, with if they have a boundary issue, and I would say probably all abusive people do, there's that sense of entitlement of, well, I couldn't afford your sister's college. Somebody had to pay for it. It's like, what? Like, how does that mean that that's somehow okay to sign me up for a loan? So you see how enmeshed things are, and how things get spun around. Like, well, gosh, well, somebody needed to pay for your sister's college, and I can't believe you wouldn't want to do that for her. I mean, I bet she would do that for you. And then your head's just spinning like, well, am I being selfish for having a problem with the fact that I'm now responsible for a student loan I didn't, and my mom stole my identity and forged loan documents? It spins you around. And so kind of getting grounded back in what appropriate boundaries are, and realizing, no, like that's not okay. That might be true, that there was no way to pay for your sister's education, but that doesn't mean that you're responsible for it. And it for sure doesn't mean that it's okay for your mom to open up and take out loans in your name and to put you on the hook for it. So I think it helps to cut through a lot of those emotions, a lot of the guilt and obligation and confusion surrounding situations like that. The more we get familiar with and comfortable with what healthy boundaries look like. So kind of starting there, and then a lot of those feelings kind of dissolve. It's like, oh yeah, I was all caught up in this guilt, and I've been trying to deal with this guilt for so long, but really it's because I had, different people in my ear that also had very blurred boundaries that were siding with somebody who was doing me harm. And that it can snowball. It can be very confusing. Let's see, let me scroll up here. Okay, Jack, I see your message. I'll check my email. It'll probably be Friday. And I'll get back to you. Clara's talking about the comeback, what we were talking about with how to kind of respond in a more detached way. You know, one of the books that I wrote, it's called The Narcissists Playbook. And it's all about how to spot manipulation and how to break free from it. And then also kind of it's really everything having to do with manipulation, and then turning inward and figuring out, okay, what are some of these kind of, what are the hooks that have us? How do we keep, especially if it's a repeating pattern, what's keeping us here? Or what are some personality traits of ours that are being continually exploited? So if you haven't read that book, I would just, it covers so much of what you're asking. You can find that book if you're an Audible person. You can find it on Audible. You can request it from your local library. So I'm a big fan of libraries, are a great way to get free audiobooks. So most libraries nowadays have an app called, they use the Hoopla or some sort of similar service to that. So it's very much like Audible. You download it onto your phone, you check out a book and an audiobook, and it automatically returns. The only thing is, obviously they don't have the selection like Audible does, but you can request it and then they'll let you know when it's in. So just a thought. Okay, let me scroll up here. Heather, I'm trying to find your, okay, here we go. She says, how can they just up and leave and not care? How do I get over this? I feel like I'm addicted to him. I'm having withdrawals from him. He makes me feel like I'm crazy. Right. Yes, absolutely. I am so sorry that you're going through this. It's, you know, when you're so fresh out of that situation, and especially when they up and leave, it can just feel absolutely soul crushing. So I guess first and foremost, I just want to say, like, you're not alone. I think there's a lot of people here, myself included, that have experienced that. And I guess also just please remember that you won't always feel this way. Like, it won't always be this painful. So just know that, because those first few weeks or months can really put a person in a dark place, and it can feel like it's never going to end, but it does. The light does come back. Really reaching out and talking to other people that have been through something similar, getting support, tripling up on your self-care is huge. Joining support groups, there's a lot of them out there. I'm still working on my website one, but I have a Facebook group. It's free, and you can find, I don't know why I changed the name on it a while ago, but anyways, you can find it if you search for, if you go to my website, thriveafterabuse.com, and go under support, you can find information on the Facebook support group there. Or actually, I think it's also in the YouTube description. So there's like, I don't even know, 57,000 people in there. And it's a pretty active group. So kind of just getting those feelings out, like all of that hurt, all of that anger, all of those questions. That's how that poison leaves your body. It leaves it by bit, and being surrounded by people that get it. And yeah, but you know, when a person leaves, when they just up and leave and just not care, what you're seeing is it's a lack of emotional attachment on their end. And like I said, that can feel soul crushing, especially if it seems to kind of come out of nowhere, especially if they've yeah, if it seems to kind of come out of nowhere and you thought everything was fine, and then, um, there's just this cruel lack of indifference. It's defensiveness. Well, if some people just don't attach deeply to other people, for starters, and that's a pretty big realization. I think most of us tend to go through life thinking that other people are kind of a lot like us. That when we say I love you, that when somebody says it back, that they have about the same depth of meaning there, or and so it can be really confusing when we come across somebody who might act the part of a, a good partner, but then in reality, like they don't look back, like they're just gone. So yeah, and that feeling, the feeling of being addicted to him, a lot of that, well, there's lots of different reasons for that. um, you know that can, well, like I said, there's lots of different reasons for that. It can come from if we've kind of made this other person our whole world. So if for a lot of partners of problematic people, they've put their friends aside, they've put their hobbies aside, and they've made this other person a very, very large part of their life. So kind of thinking, oh, this is okay, this is normal and healthy, and we just spent all this time together. But but it's a problem because we don't have that much dimension in our life, and especially if we don't have a support system in our life, if that other person was kind of the end all be all. So there's that. There's the kind of the routine, that in that sense of stability that we form with another person, no matter how toxic that relationship might be, it's still comfortable in the sense of it's what we know. So even if it's unpredictable, there's still like that comfort in the predictability of the unpredictable, if that makes sense. And the addicted feeling, so the addicted feeling can come from that. It can come from feeling it's that void of this person used to take up a large part of your life, and now they're no longer there. And so it's just this, your brain is on overdrive thinking about them all the time. It's sort of like if you quit smoking, right? And you don't replace that habit, that addiction, with something else, then all you're doing is you're walking around thinking about cigarettes. You're thinking about smoking. So it helps to add other positive things into your life to kind of crowd out the things that aren't good for you. So that there's not just that void. Also, that feeling of addictedness, that can come from a potentially it can come from what's known as trauma bonds. And trauma bonds are formed through the highs and lows. It's through the intensity of what is often abusive relationships. So, the highs are all of the good times when things seem to be going good, but then the bad times, you find out about cheating, or really major lying, or they're they're screaming, they're yelling, they're threatening to leave, or things are really, really stressful. And there's that level of uncertainty of, I don't know if this relationship's going to continue. But then there's that relief of the high of, let's say the low moment is they get upset with you for something and they don't talk to you for 3 days. And so then you're twisting like a sheet in the wind, wondering, am I ever going to hear from them again? What's going on? I don't know. Are they, there's so much uncertainty and so much anxiety and stress. And then you get a text message from them saying hi. And then there's that sense of relief of, whew, okay, the relationship is going to continue. So those highs and lows, it's the push-pull kind of a thing that creates this level of intensity that's not otherwise there in a relationship, and like a healthier relationship. And unfortunately, because those highs and lows, they create such emotional highs and lows, it can feel like love. Because it's sort of like, gosh, this person has the power to destroy me, but this person also has the power to heal me. And that's way too much power to give to another person. but it can be a slow descent into that without us even realizing it. Another reason for kind of those kind of unhinged and anxious feelings can come from like a long-standing anxious style of attachment. So like I was saying, everybody has different styles of bonding and different styles of what's known as attachment. So some people that are more on that avoidant side of the spectrum, or they don't attach, they don't form deep bonds. And, so that doesn't necessarily make them a narcissist or a sociopath, but the vast majority of the time, narcissists and sociopaths have those walls up to the point of they are more on that that with that level of defensiveness, like they are on that avoidant side of the spectrum. People with an anxious style of attachment they're always they're always on the lookout for rejection. They're always concerned about rejection, and they're terrified of relationships ending. And because of that, they tend to stay in relationships long past when it's healthy for them to be in there. So they have this attitude, and this is what can be so tricky is it can be these belief systems that are often kind of heralded by society as good things to do. Like, for example, commitment takes work, or true love conquers all, or, got to forgive and forget, or no one's perfect. Like these kinds of things, if they're not within that context of healthy boundaries, standards, and deal breakers, it'll drag us straight through hell. So here we are thinking, okay, well, I just need to be, more compassionate and more understanding and more attentive and more forgiving. And, I just got to, triple up on my communication to try to keep making things work. And things just keep not working. And we just keep being mistreated and mistreated and mistreated. But we're so emotionally invested in this relationship working out, because we've already put so much of ourselves into it. And especially if we've made this person a really large part of our world, it's sort of this feeling of, well, if I just stopped this relationship, I'd have nothing else. And that's part of that problem. So I guess what can help with that is reminding yourself too, that you had a life before this person, and you will have a life after this person. So right now, your brain is in overdrive, this attitude of scarcity of, oh my gosh, I need this person. I need this person. I only need this person. It's them and only them. And realizing that's not true. It's not true. Like your brain is telling you this for a wide variety of reasons, but I guarantee and one of the best things that you can do right now is to start engaging in other forms of support. So expanding your support system, reaching out to other people. And I know you might not feel like it right now, but doing that, getting connected and kind of filling up that void that this relationship has left in your life will help significantly. Back before COVID, I was a big fan of a website called meetup.com. I don't know what they're doing now, but hopefully we're kind of on the tail end of COVID stuff, but it's a great way to get out there, to meet new people and to just try new things. And kind of the added benefit to that, and it's not a dating site, which is I'm even more a fan of, because trying to date when you're, really vulnerable is not the headspace to be in. But with Meetup, not only are you like, okay, yeah, you know what, in this next chapter of my life, I'd really like to get more into photography, or, Chinese cooking, or learn Italian, or whatever it might be, that there's oftentimes you can find groups in your area that are doing those things. And so then you're doing things that you want to do anyhow. And then you're also meeting other people. So kind of some like-minded people that are also interested in those things. The added benefit to meetup groups, well, I think there's two. There's two other added benefits to that, is as well, when you're fresh out, odds are you do want to talk about what happened to you nonstop. It's your brain's way of processing everything. And it's very normal, because it's, you were wounded, you need that validation, you need clarity, you're needing support and all of that. So if we're spending time with, supportive people like friends and family, or even people in a support group, they might allow or have no problem hearing about this, our pain, kind of going over and over and rehashing things. But odds are we're not going to feel as comfortable doing that with strangers. And the benefit to that is it gets your brain to switch gears, and it can remind you of, okay, no, I can have conversations outside of just what happened to me. Like, I can still engage with other people about other topics. And it's nice to just give yourself a break, to be like, okay, I don't need to talk about my ex. I don't need to try to process everything tonight. I'm here at this meetup. We're watching a movie, or it's about photography, and we're just going to just keep it light and discuss photography. And then the other benefit to meetup stuff is that as you're kind of healing, odds are you're going to be learning a lot about kind of rediscovering who you are, your boundaries, your standards, your deal breakers, your self-esteem. Lots of things are going to start coming to the surface for you. And meetup groups can be really great in that way, because it's a very low stakes situation where you can try out these new skills that you're learning. And it's a lot easier to try out these new skills with strangers, especially friendly strangers, because people that are in meetup groups, they're there to meet new people. So you don't really feel like the third wheel, because everybody's there to have new experiences and to meet new people. So it's really the ideal place to try out, these new skills. And if things really go south, kind of having that comfort of, okay, you know what? Like, I don't have to go back. Like, I don't have to go back to this meetup group. So it's always much more difficult to try to practice setting boundaries and doing all of these things with people that have been in our life for a long time, or if we're starting to date again. Yeah. So, okay. Let me scroll down here. Truth Talk was talking to Heather and says, I lived through 14 years of withdrawal from my narcissist. I didn't know how to live without his chaos and intensity, and I loved him. It was not returned. By not letting him go and moving on, I lost time. He moved on 3 or 4 times. Yes. And it can be very difficult, especially if we're relating those feelings, those intense feelings of, I feel addicted to him, I'm obsessed, I can't seem to move past this person. If we're relating those feelings to love, instead of realizing, nope, this is from that intensity. It's a result of that intermittent reinforcement, that push pull that we've been getting, where it's sort of like, oh, I love you, you're so wonderful, followed by, complete silence, or, cruel mistreatment, or whatnot. So I guess kind of realizing, like, if somebody's really mistreating you, then it's not love. And that we can feel intensely, but that also doesn't mean that it's love. So getting clear in your own mind and separating the two out, I think, is a really big first step. I know for me, one of the things that I was getting hung up on, because I kept going back to, like, nostalgia was kind of pulling at me, and I'm like, oh, but I love him. And, there were so many things that were great about him. And I don't know if I'll ever find that in somebody else. And, my brain was just kind of whirling away. And then I realized, I'm like, Dana, in my situation, everything about him was a lie. It was just a mask he was wearing. a mask that he changed from person to person. And so, yeah, of course you liked the guy that he presented himself to be, like anybody would. Like that guy was pretty awesome, but that's not who he really was. Like you were in love with who you hoped he could be or who you thought he was. I was in love with the fantasy. And so realizing that of, okay, yeah, there's this difference between the the fantasy version of him and then the reality version of him. And the reality version was awful. I wouldn't want that for anybody, you know? So that helped me to kind of sort out my feelings a little better. So hopefully that'll maybe help you too with that. Let's see. Let me scroll. Joey says, I find it so strange how I was so conformed or manipulated to be or act a certain way in favor of narcissists in my life. Ever since reading The Power of Now, I started to gain more awareness of myself or of self. Yes, that was a really profound book for me as well. And it helped in terms of detaching and just kind of Eckhart Tolle there's one line in there. He talks about like events are like a thread in a tapestry that we never see complete. And I guess that helped me because it was just this sense of it helped me to back up. Like in the moment, things were like, well, this is fair or this isn't fair. This is good or this is bad. And then backing it up and realizing all of everything that's going on, it's, I'm only seeing snapshots of it. And so I don't know, that helped me to kind of not get so caught up in the play by play of everything and to kind of turn my focus onto living a good life instead of worrying or instead of being so focused on, like, well, is he miserable? Like, where's karma? Where's, it's not right. It's not fair. And all of this, and just realizing like, we don't see how these things play out. So yeah, that book is fantastic. And the concept of the pain body and all of that. Yeah, really good book. But yes, that realization of being so conformed or manipulated to act in a certain way in favor of narcissists in your life. This is a realization that, I would say probably most people have probably in their, if they ever have it, but probably around like in their 40s seems to be about the common theme there. I don't know what it is about that age, like 35 to maybe 45, but that's kind of when there seems to be a lot of awareness of, oh my gosh, there's a lot of patterns that I've been running, and here's kind of how this is, the connections are starting to be made. And yeah, realizing, wow, okay, these were the messages that I picked up when I was a kid. And the thing is, here's what's significant. We all pick up messages especially when we're children. And it can be very challenging to see these messages as messages, because when we're taking them on as a child, we're taking them on as absolute truth. So this is how we're going about understanding, how does the world work and who are we in the world and how do we relate to other people? And so then, we kind of get to a certain place in life where we're older and we realize, oh my gosh, there's another way of thinking about this. There's another way of perceiving this situation. Let's say you had a parent who, let's say you were very, I don't know, artistic, but they wanted you to be a doctor or a car mechanic or whatever it is. And they weren't supportive of your dream. Like, one way to interpret that as a child, you might have interpreted that as, my dream of being an artist is wrong. or whatever your dream might be. My dream of being fill in the blank is wrong. And then kind of later in life realizing, oh my gosh, no, my dream was a dream. Like I wanted to be an artist because I loved art. That limiting belief of I should never be an artist, that came from whoever, your parent, your art teacher, even somebody else's limiting beliefs about what was possible for you. And then realizing, oh my gosh, there's like, we can decide. We can kind of go back and decide what are my beliefs? What beliefs are empowering and still kind of working for my highest and greatest good, and which ones are really limiting me? And I guarantee you, I think we all have probably buckets full of limiting beliefs that have really just, wormed their way into our subconscious that we don't even see. We don't even see how limiting they are. But a great way to tell is to notice in what areas of your life that things aren't working. So if you're finding yourself continually hitting a wall in some area, then odds are there's some limiting beliefs there. And that's worth doing, exploring that. So with children, like you were saying, Joey, they're so conditioned to act a certain way. That's kind of the great challenge, right? So, parents have rules and structure, but even the best parents, even the most loving, supportive, nurturing parents, sometimes kids can still get that message of, that they can still pick up limiting beliefs, because it's not even necessarily the experience. It's not even necessarily what the person's telling us. Sometimes it's our perception of events. So it can be both. Either or both can be kind of problematic. But if you experienced one or more people, parents in your life who were their love was very conditional, or it was very clear, like, hey, you need to this is our expectation of you. If you step outside of this box, there's going to be consequences. And if you've lived like that, for all this time, and then kind of realizing, oh my gosh, it's sort of like leaving the matrix, right? You're like, there's another way. And now I'm starting to see things clearly. This was the box that they made for me. And that doesn't fit. And it never did fit. And now I need to kind of spread my wings and figure out who I am and what does and doesn't work for me. Heather says, oh, thank you, everyone. I've been looking at different videos. It's just so hard. I just want to feel better. I'm so hurt. He controlled me so much. I lost friends, etc. I feel so alone. Yeah, absolutely. And that's very understandable. It's that you're in a really rough space. You're in a really rough space, and it's absolutely okay to feel how you feel. It's reasonable and appropriate to feel hurt and sad and angry and full of rage and, just that wide mix of emotions, because you've been through a lot. And, kind of sitting there now, and it's like, gosh, I've lost so much. Right? How do I pick up the pieces and move on? It can feel very overwhelming. One of the things that can help is to write out a letter to him, with not with the intention of giving it to him. I would strongly recommend do not give it to him. When you're done with it, burn it or put it away or something. But writing out a letter to him, listing out all of your feelings. I am so, dear John, whatever his name is, dear John, I am so angry with you for leaving like this. And, go on. I am so confused as to how can you just up and leave and not look back? Like there's no feelings there. I am so sad. I lost contact with all of my friends. And for what? I can't believe I let that happen. I am so And you just keep going through the different emotions and why you're feeling that way. This is just getting it out of your system. It can really help just to give voice to that. Okay, let's see. Let me scroll up here. Monica says, my mom used to even say that only crazy people write books. LOL. That's interesting. I wonder why she thought that. I've always kind of thought of it as people that have something to say write books. But, you know, here's the thing too with limiting beliefs is, so like in that context, I'm guessing that you didn't take that on as a belief because you're laughing about it, right? So you kind of see like, okay, that's kind of a strange belief to have, or that's kind of a limiting belief to have, that only crazy people write books, especially let's say if you want to ever write a book. So we don't necessarily, we don't have to own the limiting beliefs of somebody else. So if you kind of realize, that's kind of a little skewed, kind of seeing that for like, that doesn't really fit. So I'm not going to own that. That's my mom's belief. That's not mine. Let's see. Let me scroll. Sorry, scrolling here. I'm getting like snippets of questions, but then Truth Talk says, my narcissist has a quote unquote public version and a quote unquote relationship version. Is this part of narcissism? It can be. I mean, it can relate to that sense of like a fragile self-image, to where a person kind of needs or wants approval or validation from others. The reality is a lot of people, quote unquote, like wear masks. A lot of people, I would say probably all of us, frankly, have different sides of ourselves to some extent, not often, probably not to like an extreme extent where we're like a radically different person, but there's the professional side versus the side that shows up on girls' night out, right? Or, yeah, just for this kind of who you are with around your parents might be different than who you are around your cousins. Or you see what I'm saying? So we all have kind of different sides or different versions of ourselves, but but when it's extreme, where it's like Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, where this person is an absolute monster at, like the movie Mommy Dearest comes to mind, where I forget the actress that was modeled after, but the woman had a very public, her public persona was very generous, very caring, very doting, very attentive, and seemingly like she was just this great mother. But then behind closed doors, she was bitter, she was harsh, she was physically and emotionally abusive, she was neglectful. It was, according to her daughter, it was horrible, and it was very confusing because there were these two radically different sides to her mother. So yeah, that kind of thing. At a minimum, it's very common for abusive people who, and not all, that's the thing too, not all abusive people kind of come across like that. Like that's more of kind of the wolf in sheep's clothing, but sometimes you get a wolf in wolf's clothing. Like sometimes you can see abusive people, and that's really dangerous. If you can see their behavior clearly, if they're not even going into any efforts to hide it, um, that's going to really escalate because they feel justified and entitled for it, and they don't see any problem with it, and that's terrifying. So, yeah, it's all of it's a problem, regardless of where it's coming from. So let's see. Oh, Magladora says, I'm glad to see you're feeling better. I wish I could stay, but I can't. Wave. Well, hi. Bye. It was good seeing you. I don't know how long I'm probably going to hop off here pretty soon. It is really hot in here and I need to turn on the AC, but I can't when I'm recording because it's too loud. So, yeah, I'm melting. Let's see. Let me scroll up. Oh, well, thank you, Darlene. She says, I would say comparing Angie and Dana is like apples and oranges, but it's actually more like oranges and pineapples. Very different, and both have their good points, but together the harmony is great. Well, thank you. Thank you. That's just awesome. I'm glad. I'm glad. I really enjoy working with Angie. We are very different in our kind of the way we see things and our life experiences and our approach. But I would agree. I that's how it feels. My dynamic with her feels like oranges and pineapples. But so I'm glad that it comes across like that. Oh boy. Okay, so this is a good question here. It's a big question. Ponderosa asks, what would be your key advice for those who are dating again after a narcissist? How should we prepare? So, okay, so one of the books that I wrote, it's called Dear Dana, and it's frequently asked questions about dating after narcissistic abuse. It answers a lot of these. It's a lot of real questions with details and names changed. That are in this book. So it's written in like kind of like a Dear Abby type format, if you're old enough to remember Dear Abby. So it's kind of, I don't know. The goal was to make it a more relatable, I guess, way of understanding kind of things to consider after, important things to learn after narcissistic abuse and before dating again. So kind of as a recap, what's coming to mind now, some of the bigger takeaways would be probably the biggest one would be developing a sense of internal validation. So, and maybe just even that awareness that there's so like kind of when we're on track and when we're off track, because if we've been doing things a certain way our whole life, like we don't know if we're on track or off track. This is just how we've been doing it, and so it can be confusing. So there's two types of validation out there. We can either get validation externally, so from other people, or we can get validation internally, so from ourselves. So what this looks like in motion is, let's say I'm dating and I come across a dating profile, or I start talking to somebody, okay, and there's things about them that just doesn't sit right with me. I don't like I don't know. They have whatever it is. I'm not even going to give details because I don't want that to derail what I'm saying, because it can. So there's things about this person that make me uncomfortable. After narcissistic abuse, when you've had a very manipulative person in your life and you've been in confusion for so long, getting back out into the dating scene, a lot of that confusion can come right back where it's sort of like, well, I don't know. Is this a big deal? Is it, who has the issue here? Is it them or is it me? Do they have confusing behavior or am I hypervigilant because of my past? And then we're waffling back and forth. And so if we don't know, then the kind of the normal response whenever a person's confused is to try to get clarity. And we tend to do this by talking to other people. We might ask that person specifically, well, hey, I think this is kind of strange. Or, can you, why are you doing this? Right. Or we might call up a good friend or talk to a therapist or a life coach or whoever it is and say, I don't know, it's just kind of weird. This didn't sit right with me. And we might be very swayed by their responses to the point where we're giving their opinion like all of the weight and ours none of the weight. But the reality is, and I know that can be difficult because we're trying to figure out, is it me? Is it them? Am I hypervigilant? Is it, kind of, are my boundaries too tall? Am I being reasonable? There's all of these kinds of things that we're trying to figure out. But the problem is if we're experiencing something that feels a little off or even a lot off, and especially if it's not that concrete, talking to other people, especially the person that has the confusing behavior, odds are it's just going to get us further stuck in the mud. So they're going to justify it. We might say, gosh, you know what? I'm just really not comfortable. And here's an example. Well, here's some examples. Okay. So this person, they say that they're not divorced, like they're separated. They still live under the same roof with their soon to be spouse, but their spouse is holding up the divorce and all this. And I don't know if I'm okay with that. Like, do you see how a person could justify that? Well, gosh, you know what? Yeah. My situation, I knew my divorce, my marriage was over years before, and I'm just giving justifications, years before, or gosh, you know what? Sally Sue and Joe, they've been in the middle of a divorce for a couple of years now. They live under the same roof, but they do it for their kids. Like, there's all different kinds of justifications a person can offer up for it. And the reality is we don't need to know that person's intentions, if they really are getting divorced, if they're still married, if they're cheating. All you need to know is that situation, does that work for you? Like if it's not comfortable for you, if you still have unanswered questions, or even if you fully believe, yeah, you know what, they're both under the same roof because of COVID or whatnot. But at the end of the day, like if you're not okay with it, then that's okay. You're not okay with it. And realizing I don't need to know, like it doesn't matter what other people think or what they say. If you're not okay with it, you're not okay with it. And so then you move on. Some other examples would be, oh, this person, they're starting to call me pet names, or, maybe let's say, I'm not looking for sex right away. But then they keep hinting at sex. Oh, well, come on over. I'll make you dinner, and I'll come over there and give you a back rub, and kind of little winky face, and kind of wanting to. Oh, are you getting ready for bed? What are you wearing? Like this kind of stuff, and it's making you uncomfortable. And you're like, gosh, this sure doesn't feel. It feels like they're trying to open the door into something more. And I told them I'm not interested in that. Instead of asking them, well, hey, I thought, we'd said, I thought I'd made it clear, like, I'm not looking for, sex right away and this, and I'm not comfortable with this. And they might say, oh yeah, no, that's just how I talk. That's just how I flirt. I didn't mean anything by it. And they justify it and they keep doing it. Right. So kind of holding your boundary, realizing if something's not comfortable for you, learning to validate yourself of like, you know what, that's not comfortable with me. And nobody else needs to agree with me in whatever it is for you. You could, I don't know, they could be Jewish and you're Catholic and you're not comfortable with the fact that they're Jewish. That's fine. You're, I don't know, a hunter and they're a vegetarian and that's an issue for you. That's okay. Dating, it's about discernment. It's about figuring out, are we going to make do we fit together? So some things you might want to explore and be kind of, and other things, and that's the things, everybody's deal breakers are different, and that's okay. You might want kids, they don't. That's okay. So kind of so back to that internal, being able to validate yourself instead of looking to others to confirm, hey, is what I'm experiencing a problem? Like asking yourself, is what I'm experiencing a problem? Yes or no? If yes, okay, then how am I going to go about handling this? So telling yourself that it's not a big deal is not a way to handle that. So realizing, okay, something's going on here. Is this something that needs to be addressed with this other person? Is this something that, am I being triggered? Like, are there emotions that maybe I need to process in therapy? Kind of what's coming up for me and how do I need to go about handling it? Is this person kind of creeping me out? Or am I just feeling a lack of connection and I need to move on? Then okay, that's fine too. So learning to validate yourself is a big one. Learning how to assert yourself is a big one. So knowing when, like, that goes back to when you experience something that's uncomfortable, the goal here is to not get better at tolerating things that are uncomfortable. The goal here is to be able to get better with speaking up when things aren't comfortable. So this is something that definitely takes time and practice. So, realizing if it's a big deal, not even a big deal, if it's a concern for you, it's worth bringing up. And looking for one of the key qualities that I really feel is important in another person, especially when it comes to dating, is, are they open to and interested in and have the ability to invest in personal growth? That's huge. So if they don't have any of that, if they're just not interested, or if they're not able to apply it, sometimes a person can seem really interested in it. They're in therapy, they've got a life coach, they're doing all these things and they're reading all these books, but there's no forward momentum. Like they know what to say, but they're not doing what they need to do. So looking at actions, that's another thing, looking at actions over words. So the personal growth thing is a big deal, because if something happens, and something will happen in a relationship, it's part of two people, like disagreements are going to happen whenever that second person enters a room, right? So how are disagreements handled? Are you able, and both of you, like, are you each able to bring up concerns in a respectful, tactful way? And are they able to be resolved? Or is what you're getting kind of defensiveness, anger, are they withdrawing? Are they shutting down? Are they, becoming abusive? Are they using intimidation? They're threatening to leave. They start raising their voice, this kind of stuff. And, again, kind of crossing that bridge. Like if that happens, then getting clear of like, okay, at a minimum, making it, well, it totally depends on the person and the situation and the level of problematic behavior you experience. But if it's on the more like quote unquote mild end, at least making that known of, you know what, I don't do silent treatment. Like, I know you're upset. Like, I know we really were not seeing eye to eye the other day, and it's okay. Like, if you're upset with me, or if you're just upset and you need to take some time, totally fine. But I need to know when you're planning on reopening contact. because I don't do, so it also kind of setting that standard for yourself of, I don't do perpetual confusion in a relationship. I don't do crazy making, and I don't do mental anguish, which I guess is kind of crazy making. So I don't, if something can't be resolved, you know, or if I'm constantly wondering, or if I'm constantly, not even constantly, if I'm just on the receiving end of confusing behavior, something doesn't add up, like something squirrely. You left work at 4 o'clock and you're rolling in the door at 11 and you didn't call. Where have you been? You know, I'm not trying to act like your mom. I just want, like, you fall off the radar. I'm concerned, you know, so being able to communicate with each other and without the other person getting defensive or shutting down communication, or, you know, that kind of thing. So yeah, being able to effectively communicate and get things resolved is huge. With that, I would also say, you know, kind of holding back your emotions until you realize the relationship has the potential for some roots to it. So, and this was a big lesson for me. It took me a long time to learn this, but you know, at first it can just feel so exciting. Like, oh yeah, I really like this person. They seem to like me. We have this chemistry. We have so much in common. It's so great. And that's fun. And that can be really exciting, but the relationship doesn't really start to take root until those disagreements and those differences begin to surface. That's when you'll start to find out, does this chemistry that I have with this other person, does it have what it takes in order for something to actually grow out of it? So when those disagreements surface, it can be uncomfortable at first, but then that's how you're going to find out, how does this person handle frustration and anger? And are they able to work as a team? And are they able to effectively communicate? And, you know, kind of where is their level of emotional maturity? And what kind of stuff do they still need to work through? Because everybody's got stuff. And is this something that I'm willing to take on? And, you know, kind of, it's like turning over the rock, I guess. You know, like at first it looks like this shiny, cool rock that you find. You're like, oh, this is so awesome, I love it. And you turn it over, and on the underpart, it's all like little doodle bugs and worms. And you're like, ew. That's the stuff of relationships. It's not sexy. It's how do they handle frustration and anger and money, and what are, you know, how do they handle boundaries and communicating their wants and needs, and all of that stuff. That's, you know, so I guess kind of holding emotions back until you get to that point in a relationship and start to realize, okay, does this have potential? Does it have real potential here? Yeah. Well, and I guess too, even with that, I guess if you're going to start online dating again, realizing that there's a lot of deceit out there. Online dating is, it's very hit or miss, probably more so miss than anything else. There's a lot of people out there that are very deceitful, that are cheating, that are lying, that are catfishing, that are scamming, that are all kinds of things. So really take it extra slow with online dating, and, you know, and at a minimum, don't give people money that you meet on the internet. So yes, that's kind of some of the basic advice that I have. Let's see, let me scroll down here. Oh no, what did I say? UNA says, that makes so much sense. I guess it really proves that I am a pretty disgusting human. Should just never try to communicate or get to know others. Makes sense. I'm pretty worthless. Oh my gosh. That took a left turn. Um, okay. So I'm scrolling up here. I'm catching snippets here, UNA. She says, okay, I tend to try hard to get better at tolerating things that are hard for me. And I blame myself when it is hard for me. Okay. Well, and there's that difference, right? Like, and that's the challenge. It can be so hard to see at the time of like, am I giving up too soon? Kind of the adage of, well, anything worth having takes hard work, right? So do I need to get better at tolerating discomfort or tolerating kind of hard things, like increase my frustration tolerance? Or or is it the opposite, that I need to get better at walking away from certain things? And it's going to depend on the situation. That's kind of the big challenge with it. Like there's certain things in life where, yeah, increasing our frustration tolerance, like learning a new habit, um, sticking with something, like completing a project, that often entails, battling battling through frustration. And kind of getting to our goal requires overcoming that frustration. But in terms of a relationship, if you've got this very difficult person in our life where um, their behavior, there's so much friction, and uh, kind of, we're not being treated with dignity and respect. They don't seem to really sincerely be team oriented. The relationship is very kind of one-sided in their favor, that we find ourselves, over giving. Kind of the way that we're keeping things going is through this people pleasing behavior of, okay, well, I guess, as the result, like, because we either basically assert ourselves, right? We either say, hey, you know what, this doesn't work for me. But if we're not comfortable doing that, then the other options are, okay, well, then I'm either going to be passive aggressive, which, I'm going to burn your dinner or slam the door and say nothing's wrong, but obviously something's wrong, or kind of settle the score in other ways, or be aggressive. And then, so, or stay passive. Those are the options. And so for a lot of us, the default has been, I'll just stay passive. Like, I don't want to rock the boat. Right. And so we stay passive, we try to, keep the boat steady by using niceness. Like, okay, I'm just going to keep going with the flow. I'm just going to give in to you. I'm just going to smile and nod. I'm just going to, get better at avoiding certain topics and avoiding telling you when things are wrong with me. I'm going to start avoiding telling you anything that I don't think that you really want to hear about me, about us, about life, and that's the walking on eggshells part of it. And then kind of after, and it really doesn't even take that long, but after living like that, that's when we start realizing, like, I don't even know who I am anymore, because we've turned down the volume on who we are. We've learned, like Joey was saying, it's this box. You realize, okay, if I'm going to have this relationship with this other person, I have to stay in this box. But that's not staying in a box that somebody else builds for you. That might keep that relationship going, but it's going to be at that expense of your authenticity. And that's tragic. The world needs you to show up and be the highest and best version of you. It doesn't need for you to play small and kind of hide your strengths from the world. Okay, let me scroll here. Claire asked, Dana, do you do personal talks with people or coaching? I don't at this time. I do these, these live streams, and I do one. Angie and I alternate on Tuesdays, so we on each other's channel. Yeah, and that might change in the future. I'm kind of toying around with doing kind of more like recorded questions. I don't know. We're kind of exploring changing the formatting because I still, if you guys have been around for any length of time, I struggle. It's random with anxiety when I go live. And sometimes it's manageable and other times it is not. So, yeah. But you can ask a question if it's in, I would encourage you to leave it kind of generic enough that you, if you're comfortable asking for me to read it on the air, then I can read it at the following live stream. So you can send me questions at deardana@thriveafterabuse.com if you have any specific questions. That's a great example. Truth talks about kind of shifting of internalizing versus leaving things on the external. Truth talks mentions, once I realized none of it had to do with anything with me. And that's when I developed kind of a wry sense of humor and laughed it off, not at his pain, but how pig-headed he remains. Yes. So making that shift of, oh my gosh, other people's behavior, it's a reflection of them. It's not a reflection of us. This can be very difficult to realize, especially when their behavior is directed towards us and they're telling us that their behavior is specifically due to us. And again, that can be that abusive person's, well, look at what you made me do kind of a thing. So, but realizing, no, they have options. And even if you did do something that was frustrating or angering, that they're still, the other person is still responsible for handling their emotions. So it's okay for everybody to get frustrated and angry. We all do, but it's not okay for another person to lash out at you or to start belittling you or bullying you or to be hateful or hurtful. That's the line. So they might be, you forgot to buy ketchup at the store. That's why they cussed you out when you got home, according to them. But the reality is, no, they cussed you out because they felt entitled to do so. They felt justified in doing so because you made a mistake. But hopefully now you can start seeing, okay, they were frustrated. You forgot to buy ketchup. It happens, right? It's okay for them to be frustrated. It's not okay for them to cross that line and become bitter and carping and harping and trying to tear you down. Like, that's not okay. So that's where this understanding of boundaries comes into play. Of there needs to be that line there where, where there's kind of this understanding of what is appropriate adult behavior and what is not appropriate adult behavior. If you're a coworker, let's think about it at work. If your coworker, I don't know, overslept and did something that really frustrated you, it's not okay for when they walk in the door for you to throw your coffee at them, or for you to, I don't know, leave to be passive aggressive and leave a tuna fish sandwich in the back of their filing cabinet, right? Like, that's not okay. So that's the thing with kind of realizing that, of, oh my gosh, this other person's behavior, it's a reflection of where they are, and it's not a reflection of me. It's very powerful. Let's see, let me scroll up here. Scrolling. Lori, hello, Lori, asks, how much time should someone wait after leaving a long toxic relationship before they date again? Is that the full question? I think it is. Okay. I guess the way that I look at it, it's not so much in terms of time, it's more of what you're doing with that time. So a person could wait 10 years before they start dating again, but if they're not doing anything in that 10 years, then, it's going to be the same as if a person waits, let's say a year, but during that year, they're in therapy, they're in support groups, they're really actively, kind of do a quote unquote doing the work of healing. So yeah, so it's not about the time, it's about what you're doing with it. At a minimum, I would say it's during, and here's the challenge too, because you'll hear people say this, and you've probably even heard me say this too, but kind of you want to make sure that you're healed before you start dating again. And there's a lot of truth to that. However, what I have come to realize is there's only so much healing that can happen when you're single. So we can do all of this work. We can get into therapy and support groups and, we're reading all this stuff and we think we're just really chugging along, but certain wounds won't be activated until you're in a relationship. They just lie dormant. And that can feel very surprising and very defeating when they do surface, if you're not aware of it. So I guess hopefully now you're aware of it since I just mentioned it. But I guess just realize that. And this goes back to giving yourself grace and compassion, because it can really spin you for a loop of, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that this was still here. And that, like I said, that can feel very defeating. But this is where kind of seeking out a partner who has empathy, who has compassion, who is emotionally healthy. And I should preface this by saying emotionally healthy enough, has, effective communication skills, has enough effective communication. Like, we're not looking for perfection here. We're looking for somebody that, and we're also looking to be somebody that it's on that path of growth. So we just need enough of these skills in order to stay growth oriented. So yeah, I guess just kind of realize that at a minimum, before you start dating again, you want to be able, like I was mentioning before, having that sense of internal validation where you're feeling pretty grounded, and that you can discern the difference between something that's comfortable for you and something that's uncomfortable for you. Something that feels safe for you versus something that feels unsafe for you, physically, emotionally, financially, these kinds of things. And again, this is not to say that we need to do this perfectly, because we won't, because we're human, and that's okay. But if a situation's not sitting right with you, that you're in tune enough with yourself to kind of realize, okay, this is how things feel when it's not okay with me. Like, I start finding myself feeling irritated or frustrated, or I start kind of rehashing a situation. It's that perpetual confusion. It's that crazy making. It's mental anguish. It's losing sleep. It's maybe kind of minimizing the situation to other people, like wanting to leave out certain things. Like, all of those are signs, okay, that there's a problem. Not having your self-esteem tied up with dating, that can be a big one. And that, because I'll type in dating, it's hard out there. Like, and it will do a number on your self-esteem if you let it. So kind of practicing keeping your hurt feelings and your self-worth on two different buckets. So because dating is all about that process of discernment, is this other person, do we fit? Do we have enough in common? And is this a good situation? Dating is all about rejection. You're looking for the one, or depending on what kind of relationship you're looking for, but you're not looking for everyone, right? So it's going to be about rejection. Somebody's going to get rejected. Either you're going to reject them or somebody's going to be rejecting you. And so kind of having your emotional shields up and being able to put your hurt feelings in your hurt feelings bucket and not letting it spill over into your self-worth to where it starts to snowball and you're thinking, oh gosh, I'm not lovable. What's wrong with me? It's, and you just really start getting to that negative spiral. So feeling pretty good about, and I think having an accurate understanding of like your strengths and weaknesses and owning it. Like, yeah, like, this is what I bring to the table. I'm comfortable or I'm confident with that. And then with weaknesses, yep, these are my weaknesses and I own it. Like, I wish maybe they were different, but this is what it is. And, and, so not letting that kind of knock you down. Really building up a life that you love, having your own friends, having hobbies, having interests, to the point of where a relationship feels like the icing on the cake, but not the whole cake. So if our life is totally empty and we're like, I really need this, I need a relationship because without a relationship, I have nothing. That's the codependency. Like that's a problem. And that unfortunately, tragically, continually looking for other people to kind of be the whole cake leaves us starving because it's such an imbalance right out of the gate. And those relationships tend to not work well. So yeah, those would be some of the big things. UNA says, she says, I really care about people, but I'm terrible about being with them. So even if I crash, she says, I am an INFJ, not being there hurts them. So I am worthless. And Joey was saying, every day is a challenge, possibly more so for us introverts, but just remember it's always one day at a time. Change the mindset, your reality changes. The tricky part is maintaining the change. Yes, very well said. And I hope that you can kind of see what Joey's saying, UNA, because girl, I hear you loud and clear with that. I am the same way. I'm an introvert, and there are many times where I crash, where I'm like, I just need to be alone. I need to recharge. I drop off the radar. You guys have known this. I am this way in every aspect of my life. I just I need a lot of alone time, and I tend to turn inward when stuff is going on. I don't tend to go outward and seek connection or comfort from other people. And that's a hard way to be. And it's not conducive to nurturing relationships. And I can absolutely agree with that too, that feeling of, and when I'm not there, then it hurts them. And feeling like, man, because sometimes I feel like maybe I should just stay away from people because I do care so much, but I have a hard time, kind of reaching out and maintaining things kind of for a variety of things. So I can relate. But this, I guess what I'm saying is, at the end of the day, this doesn't make you or me worthless. It just means this is one of the challenges that a lot of introverts have. That's all that means. It absolutely doesn't mean you're worthless. That's a big jump to make. And those two things are not connected in any way, shape, or form. They really aren't. So I hope that you can see that um, that there's a disconnect there, and because that is absolutely a belief that's worthy of being replaced with something that's more something that's more accurate, for starters, and something that's more empowering, for sure. Um, let's see that. No, Fatima's struggling. She's talking about she possibly needs braces and saying it's very hard to chew and even breathe because of my misaligned jaws. She says, I'm just getting very depressed because of it. Yeah, and other people in the chat are talking about their experiences with braces and kind of dental stuff and and getting that fixed. Yeah. And that might be kind of a good way to go about it too, Fatima, is to talk to some people, you know, um, like I guess the Reddit comes to mind, where there's a lot of different communities of people about like dental work or different types of procedures like that, and see. So I think it's always kind of helpful to talk to other people that are experiencing something similar or that have experienced something similar, because they can relate. Because yeah, it's there's a lot going on there, right? Like you said, it's hard to chew, it's hard to breathe, it's frustrating, it can feel very defeating, it can feel overwhelming, um, you know, and yeah, talking to other people and just reaching out for support can really help. And I hope that you can get some answers for your situation there soon. Because yeah, I bet that does start to feel depressing. Oh, she says, I even don't want to go outside, or I don't want people to see me because of it. Oh, I'm sorry, sweetie. Yeah, I know that that's so hard. And I know you're, especially at your age and everything else. And yeah, so hopefully you can get some good support out there, and hear from other people, um, and maybe even, I don't know if you've talked to an orthodontist or uh, you know somebody to kind of see like what would the process look like, and get some of those questions, get some of those unknowns answered. Truth Talk says, I no longer care if someone is offended. I try not to overtalk, overthink. I keep my words honest and authentic. If the truth offends them, it's not about me. Yeah. Yeah, there's kind of that line, like, I'm a fan of kind of being tactful with the truth. Um, but at the same time, like, all any of us can do is to set our boundaries in a tactful way, and then we have to let go of it. And it's, how people perceive what's said is through the lens of where they are. That's a kind of a weird thing to wrap your head around. Um, that it's not just what's said, it's how they're perceiving what's said. So, you know, if you, especially if you set a boundary and let somebody know, hey, I don't like to be talked to like that, or that's not really appropriate, or, I don't think that's in my, that's kind of just not what I'm looking for. However you want to say it, to set some sort of boundary with somebody and they get offended, they get upset, then, that's on them. So we're not responsible or capable of making other people okay. That's not our job. Like, their job, especially as adults, needs to be to self-soothe. Nobody likes to be told no, or any like shade of no, right? Nobody likes that. But it's part of kind of becoming a well-adjusted adult to be able to handle being told no, or any shade of no, to become okay with that. So we can't let the feelings of others dictate our boundaries. We have to get better at tolerating their discomfort. So, like, for example, if you have a very difficult or kind of high conflict parent, and they want you to come home for Christmas and you don't want to go, or you say, you know what, I'd love to be there, but I'm only going to be there for 3 hours. And they get upset. Oh, like, what? You don't love me? You don't love your mother? I've done so much for you. I can't believe that you would do this. And, I'm not going to be around forever. And they're using throwing everything at you, right? The guilt, the obligation, all of it. And our old pattern might have been to kind of crumble and give in. Oh gosh, okay, yeah, well, I don't want to be a terrible daughter, so I guess I better go do this. But realizing, no, it's okay. Like, if your boundary is, this is like this level of dysfunction, 3 hours is my maximum. And even then, afterwards, I need to go set up an appointment with my therapist and possibly have a drink, then that's your maximum, and your mom or whoever might be really upset, but they need to they can be upset. Like, it's okay for you to have a boundary. They'll just have to learn how to cope. X says, I remember saying, I really need my partner to be more supportive. And his response was, oh, you mean someone you can walk all over? She said, it's just sad. Yeah, that kind of thing. So if that's basically what's known as a red herring, right? So you're going down one path and then a person throws something else into the mix. That's not related, because that's not related at all. Two very different things. Kind of understanding all of the ways that conversations can get spun off course. So, and then to generally either redirect the conversation back on course, or to be like, okay, we need to take a time out for tonight. Like, we're not getting anywhere. Or maybe we just need to maybe we just need to end things because this isn't going to go anywhere. Like, we're not on the same page. If you feel like me setting a boundary is somehow punishing you, or me stating, hey, you know what, I really need for you to be more supportive of this, or this really means a lot to me, and I could really use your support, or whatever. But if they're interpreting you needing something that's reasonable, like, okay, I really could use you to be more supportive of this, or you setting a boundary of any kind, or asserting yourself in any way, neither person takes it as an attack, then that's a problem. And that's a big sign of, okay, there's not effective communication here. And, we're not looking for a perfect person, but we're also not looking for a person who's a full-on project either, because that's an awful lot of work. And odds are you're probably not even going to get very far, because what's going to happen is nobody likes to be a project, right? So it's their actions. If we approach them like a project, then it's going to start to really frustrate them, and it's going to annoy you, because you're putting on all this work. And they're like, why get off my back? Like there's nothing, because they don't see that they have a problem. So it's like, hey, there's nothing wrong with me. Like, because they don't see that they have a problem. So yeah, that can be really frustrating. Let's see, X. Oh, Jennifer asked, hey, Dana, are you still in Canada? If so, are you there temporarily? Are you coming back? I am coming back in the next few weeks, and I'll probably be traveling around the US. I'm going to go see my mom and go see my brother and my stepbrother and some other people. And then I've got to apply to get back into Canada. So I don't know. Yeah. So you guys are going to be seeing the inside of probably a lot of different Airbnbs over the next couple months here. Okay, X, and I'm only catching part of this here. She's saying that maybe he could be mistaken as a narcissist because his traumas made him not want to lose his power by letting people walk all over him, when actually it should be a team thing. It's just really sad. The word narcissist gets thrown around way too easily these days. Yeah. The reality is it, it doesn't even really matter if it's if he's a narcissist or if his behavior is due to unprocessed trauma. Either way, it's a really big problem. So if his unprocessed trauma is if he's at this place where he's so defensive and he's so on guard and he has walls instead of boundaries, where there's this constant fear of kind of losing that power. And if anybody asserts themselves and he feels like it's an attack, that's a huge problem. And that's something, like if it's previous trauma, especially if it's previous trauma, that didn't start with you and it's not going to end with you. Like that kind of stuff really involves him therapy and him being open to doing that work of making his life work. And it's really tragic when we kind of come across people in our life where, we can see, we're like, man, this person, it's sad because there can be a lot of really great things about them, but they are so guarded. They are so defensive. They just can't let anybody in, and they can't make room for anybody because they don't feel safe, or they just constantly feel attacked, and or they're suspicious, or whatever it might be. It's yeah, it's hard to see that, and it can be hard to kind of disengage and realize I can't, this person, the help that they need is more than I can give and more than I should give. Like there needs to be kind of an outside professional here. Like I don't want to take on the role of therapist or parent to my partner, because that's generally not going to end well either. So, but yeah. Oh, well, congratulations. Jennifer says, I just applied for my naturalization to become an American citizen a few weeks ago. Michigan has been my home for half my life, so I don't think it'll be an issue, but I guess it's a really long wait right now. Yeah. Yeah, I've heard that too. I think COVID has just slowed everything way, way down. So congratulations on starting that process. That's very exciting. X says, well, it's a good thing he's starting therapy for the first time in his life recently. Yeah, but I will say the challenging thing too is, keep in mind that other people, it's other people's issues are always so much clearer than our own. Right. So it's always so much easier to look at another person and be like, man, gosh, yeah, this person's really got some walls. They really struggle with trusting. any type of feedback or issue that's brought up in a relationship, it's met with defensiveness, whatever. The challenge with therapy is that odds are there's a very solid chance that they don't see the same issue that you see. And even if they did, they don't see it in the same way. And even if they did see it in the same way, they're not going to be seeing it all of the same times that you saw it surface. So this is just kind of the challenge with individual therapy in general is you go in there, a person goes in there and they're recounting their life experience or their kind of whatever's bringing them into therapy at that time through their best understanding. And it's really wild how different people's understandings can be. So just because a person is in therapy is no guarantee that that needle's going to move at all. Sometimes it can even go backwards because if the therapist is hearing, generally you're only hearing this one person's side of things. So, and if their perception of reality is really skewed, then it can just kind of get them entrenched deeper into that mud of dysfunction with the therapist not even knowing. So, yeah, so it can be a challenge, and it's difficult. I think it's difficult for the vast majority of people to take a long, hard look at ourselves and to realize this is kind of some stuff that's not working in my life, and figuring out what needs to happen and doing the work of actually changing it. Yeah. X says, yeah, absolutely right. I felt optimistic about the therapy, but could be he doesn't really get what he needs to tackle exactly. That's very, very, very common. So if a person, kind of think of it this way, like we all have defense mechanisms that we use. Sometimes we use them consciously, but the vast majority of the time we use them unconsciously. And we use these different defense, and there's lots of them. We use these different defense mechanisms as a way to shield ourselves against reality or against painful moments of reality. We justify things, we minimize things, we deny things, it goes on and on. Like there's all kinds of ways that we try to avoid painful, stressful things. And our brain is really, really good at it. So there's kind of this, we're kind of wired that way to avoid the pain of reality. And so it can be a real challenge to, to actually see a problem for what it is and to own our part in it. And so if a person's coming from this place of, we might call it like toxicity or dysfunction or like deep dysfunction. If you're seeing a lot of these, what's known as more primitive defense mechanisms, that person is pretty far away from reality. Like they're spending all of their time running away from it. So therapy with that kind of stuff, it takes a bit. And that's if the person's even aware of that this is an issue for them. X says, yeah, and then I have these days where I wonder if he really has a narcissistic personality after all. I think that's normal too. Wondering that kind of who, does he really have a problem? Is it me? Am I trying to deny it? Am I trying to justify what I experienced? Is it, would this have been workable? This is kind of why I think it's helpful to go back to what you do know. Like, did you give it your best? Did you try your best to communicate effectively with this person? If so, and if that didn't work, then that's all any of us can do. If you're expressing your wants and needs to your partner, and you're being um, you're getting a very reasonable request met with defensiveness, that's a problem. Like, that's real, that's not workable. That, you know, that, or if it is going to be workable, that requires quite a bit of work. So it's reasonable and appropriate to expect somebody, um, like, to be treated with dignity and respect, to be treated, um, to feel emotionally safe in a relationship, to feel, to be able to have your own wants and needs, to be able, and same with your partner, and to be able to express that, and to have that sense of mutuality, where it's a two-way street, right? Like, you're able to support them, they're able to support you. Um, there's that sense of comfort there. Um, you know, if that's missing, if it's kind of their way or no way, then that's not workable. That's a one-way street, and one-way streets don't make for a two-way relationship. So, Amo Jojo says, the question: I recently learned about hypnotherapy, and I'm curious to see what you think about it. It depends on what you're going to hypnotherapy for. So, my thoughts on hypnotherapy: if a person, I wholeheartedly do not agree with hypnotherapy in terms of trying to seek out like repressed memories. I feel like that's, um, the damage that can do, it far outweighs any good. Um, so yeah, I'm not a fan of trying to recover memories. The odds of there being either intentionally or unintentionally implanted false memories is really, really, really high. So when there's hypnotherapy, that's, um, anything that really can't be proven, um, or that runs that risk of being high. It's like past life regressions, or I've heard of hypnotherapy like in the womb, kind of what happened to you when you were like in utero, or when you were a baby, or things that a person doesn't remember. Like, I think that's, um, it's pseudoscience, and I'm not a fan of that. I think it opens the door to causing uh, a lot of problems. Hypnotherapy, in terms of, well, I guess I think there's a time and place for it. With certain, I don't know, there's a time and place for it. I'm a huge believer and proponent in the power of the subconscious mind, and how the subconscious mind directs like the vast majority of our behavior. So I believe in like the premise of hypnotherapy, the methodology, and how it's used, and kind of the issue that person's directly trying to address. It has to all kind of be taken into context. So, um, I think if anything, well, I don't know. I said there's a time and a place for it. EMDR, I'm a big fan of EMDR. A lot of working, there's some overlap there. So they kind of work addressing, limiting beliefs, or kind of accessing painful events, and kind of instilling more empowering beliefs. Uh, that's kind of a concept with some forms of hypnotherapy for some reasons, or, for some causes, or some reasons a person might seek out hypnotherapy. Same with EMDR. So, um, yeah. So I guess in that sense, I'm a bigger fan of EMDR. Yeah, I guess it just, kind of depends. Oh, well, thank you, Brenda. She says, I am new here and I just completed your book, Out of the Fog. It totally changed my life. I'm 36. I met the narcissist at age 18. I just didn't know any better. Well, welcome, Brenda. And I'm glad that my book helped. And um, yeah, and you're absolutely right. You know what? You were 18. You were 18. Even at 36, this stuff's not taught. This stuff is not taught. And it's tragic and bordering on criminal, frankly, that there isn't more emotional health kind of awareness. It's a miracle that anybody kind of gets through life without getting tangled up with really problematic people, because there's a lot of them out there. And you did the best you could with the information that you had at the time. And now that you know different, you can start to do different. And that goes with each and every one of us, and giving yourself that compassion and grace of, you didn't know, you did not know. You were probably like any other normal, decent person who was going through life thinking, well, gosh, yeah, this is what we do, right? Commitments forever, and we got to forgive and forget. And, I can't hold on to the past, and relationships take work, and no one's perfect. And, kind of operating from that standpoint and not realizing that all of that advice is, if it's out of context, if it's with a person who is so blindingly selfish and um, you know and manipulative, then it's just going to drag you straight through hell. Like it's there's no value in staying with somebody like that. And that's a huge realization for a lot of people, because it's like, oh, you know so yeah. So welcome. Baby asks, what is the best way to not stay emotionally stuck and thinking about all of the details of the past with a narcissist? Oh, there's a couple things. Well, I think kind of getting it out helps. So writing a letter of kind of everything that's been swirling around in your mind, and writing a letter to them, dear John, this, or Johnette, or whoever, this really hurt me. I was really angry. I was really disappointed. Like you're describing how you're feeling. I was really disappointed. I feel lied to. I am deceived. I'm disgusted. I am angry. I am sad. I'm all of these things. So you're talking about how you're feeling and then why. I'm sad. I spent 18 years of my life with you and thinking I was doing the right thing and trying to be a good spouse to you, and a good partner, and you betrayed my trust, and you just, your lack of empathy, like your lack of care and concern, all of it. It's just, it just, I didn't deserve that. I didn't deserve that. That was not okay. It was not right. It was not fair. I'm angry. And then you're just putting it out there. And then at the end, you either go bury the letter, or you burn the letter, or you tuck the letter away and you put it up in a box in your closet or something. But getting that stuff out of your system. Um, Something else that can help. One of the things that really helped me was to have a mantra. So it was a phrase. So and I kind of go through different phrases as my life changes. But at the time, I had the phrase, the best revenge is a good life. And so when I found myself getting into kind of rehashing events and feeling as really angry, there's only so much anger like a person can feel before it becomes unproductive, right? So sort of like, okay, I'm not stuffing my feelings. Like I realize that I'm angry. I'm realizing that I'm hurt. I'm realizing that I'm uh, all of these things. I'm sad. I'm, um, you know, just feeling at times bitter and jaded, all of these different feelings. But my kind of North Star at that time was reminding myself, okay, Dana, the best revenge is a good life. The best revenge is a good life. And all of where, I could only handle, like I said, I could only handle so much anger. It was only productive for me to handle it in kind of chunks. If I allowed that hose to be turned on all the way, it felt like a fire hose, and it felt like I'm not going to be able to turn this off, and this could ruin my life. So there was that line for me between feeling my feelings but then not getting consumed by them. And so with that overflow, I guess you could say, of feeling, where it was like, okay, I'm feeling like this is like debilitating to me, then I would remind myself, Dana, the best revenge is a good life. And then I would go get busy into making that good life happen. And it didn't have to be anything major. It could be going outside and pulling weeds, or doing the dishes, or cleaning out my car, or taking my dog for a walk, or doing a mud mask, or, making my bed, or whatever. It was kind of, these were little ways where I could pour that excess energy into something productive that worked towards my highest and greatest good. And it built my life up. Because I will tell you, as you probably are very aware of, these things can go one or two ways. And you can take this anger and this energy, and you can channel it into something constructive. And if you don't consciously do that, it's very easy for it to become destructive, to slide into drinking, drug use, excessive, you name it, exercise, eating, kind of developing like these maladaptive ways of coping to where it's destructive. So trying to pour that extra energy into things that are constructive and productive in your own life. And it's like I said, it's a fine line, because there's also something to be said with kind of using busyness as a way of avoiding feelings. But this is why I'm saying it's a fine line. I'm not saying I walked it perfectly all the time. I for sure didn't. But at the time, I could only handle so much of each of those emotions, or else I'm like, I'm not going to get out of bed. Like, I'm just not going to be functional if I felt everything like that was happening. So I needed, and the term is sublimate. I needed to sublimate those feelings into something constructive, because it was that very real, and I've shared this before, it was this realization. It was at a Thanksgiving dinner. It was just one of those fluke things. I happened to go see some family for Thanksgiving, and my family, my dad's side's kind of strange. Like, there's always new people. Like, I don't know who they are. Like, just relatives that come out of nowhere, where I'm like, everybody's like, where did you come from? It's just weird. Anyways, so there were these two older women there. They had to have been close to their 90s. And they were talking about some event. And my cousins and I kind of got to the table last, I guess it was. And we're kind of catching up on the conversation. And I think my cousin, we had the same, because these two women, they were so heated, they were so upset. And it, at least for me, it registered like this event must have just happened to them. And then realizing as their story progressed, oh no, this happened to them like 80 years ago. This happened to them when they were children. And my cousin and I both looked at each other at the same time, like when we realized this, of, oh my God, this was a long time ago. And they're still this upset about it. And the timing was so weird, because I was going through all this stuff in my life. And so driving home, it was kind of this realization of, how like old ladies like that, how they get to be bitter and jaded old ladies is they have something traumatic happen. Generally, when they're younger, they start off as young, bitter and jaded ladies or men, right? And that anger just hardens, and then they just keep it with them. And that thought terrified me, because I could see myself going down that path of I didn't want to be that. like, I don't want to carry so much. I don't want to carry all of this anger and rage with me and get so wound up about it when I'm 90 years old. Like that just, man, to add insult to injury, like it's bad enough to have something traumatic happen to you, but to have that pain be so fresh for decades it's heartbreaking. So that's when I got busy. I'm like, I need to not wait around and hope that I heal and just hope that I come out on the other side of this okay. Like I need to get a plan, and I need to steer myself in a direction and not just leave things up to chance. And that was probably one of the best things I ever did for myself, was realizing realizing that I could, that that there was another path, that I didn't have to just hope that time healed all wounds and, and then kind of like let the chips fall where they may. That I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to use what happened to me for my highest and greatest good. The best revenge is a good life. And I did. And that made all of the difference, was just steering in that direction. And I didn't have all the answers, and you won't either, and the good news is you don't need to. It's just moving in the direction that's for your highest and greatest good, one step at a time. Like that's all you need to see, is just the next step. And start building up a life that you love, that's authentically a reflection of you and who you are today. Taurus says, haha, Dana, were they Italian? Yes, they were. Let's see. Let me scroll. Yeah, Truth Talks is saying, I found solutions-based counseling helpful. Spending time dissecting all of the toxicity was counterproductive. I wanted solutions, answers, and it helped me the most. Yeah, and that's kind of the challenge, right? Because everybody, even though we all have kind of different versions of the same story, it's healing in many ways is somewhat of an individual process. And so kind of everybody comes to that first step is different for everybody, I guess is what I'm saying. So some people, well, and it can feel very overwhelming of like, okay, well, what is this? What does it mean? What does it mean to heal? What am I trying to even heal from? Like, whose fault is it? I still miss them. I still love them, but this relationship was really toxic. And there's just so much confusion to untangle. Some people, find it helpful to to start at different places. But at a minimum, I feel like true healing does involve that solutions-based focus of kind of finding solutions. But I think a big part of the solution comes from turning inward. So I think a big first step for a lot of people is realizing that not everybody wants the same things in life. That people, we're all raised to think that we're all kind of the same, that people are all inherently the same, that we all kind of want the same things. Like we all want to be happy. And yeah. And and that's not true. Well, I should say, we all don't want to be happy in the same way, or the same things don't make everybody happy. So, not everybody has the same ability to connect, to bond at the same level as other people. Not everybody has the desire not everybody views marriage in the same way. Not everybody views being single in the same way. Not everybody views children in the same way. And so that can really rattle our worldview because I mean, again, most people kind of think, uh, uh, you know, that other people, that we all kind of have the same level of empathy or compassion or manners or respect or decency or whatever. And that's not true at all, at all. And so when you come across somebody who has such a radically different way of living or a radically different moral compass, it's shocking. And that can take a long time for a person to see, especially if the other person's manipulative and they're doing one thing, but then they're telling you something else, or they're promising to change. And, you know, it's just, you know, not on most people's radars. Like, I give the example, my grandmother was married to a narcissist for, I don't know, 20 something years. And he was a minister and he really acted the part. And my mom had a really hard life because of him. You know, he spent money on himself and his girlfriends and blamed my grandmother for him cheating on her. And my grandmother believed him. And so she spent all of his time trying to be a better wife, to cook better meals, to, you know, to get him to deal with the kids more, to do all of these things to keep him faithful. Because to everybody else, he seemed like this great catch. He was real charismatic. He was intelligent. He was, you know, seemingly had all these things going for him. But, you know, he drove them into absolute poverty. Like, my mom grew up really, really poor, and, you know, just a lot of struggles because of her dad. And it's so heartbreaking because my grandmother just didn't see it coming. It wasn't even in her world, her understanding of the world, that somebody could be Christian and could know all of these things about Christianity and get up there and preach about it and practice it in some respects, but then have like really no moral compass. Like, that just didn't click. And so she had the mindset of, well, if he's running around with other women, it's because he's unhappy at home. He's unhappy with me. It took her a very long time. And oh man, took her a very long time to realize, no, it's him. Like, it's not you. And no matter how good of a cook you are, no matter how attractive you try to be, you know, if a person has no moral compass, they have no moral compass, and you can't you can't do enough to get you can't earn somebody's loyalty like that, or faithfulness. So yeah, it's just not on the radar of a lot of people. So I agree. Jennifer says it's just so disgusting, the idea that someone can make someone else cheat on them. Yeah. Yeah, there's no accountability there, right? And Fatima says, she says, they say that I'm overthinking it, that there's nothing wrong with my mouth and jaw when there clearly is. They think they can try to manipulate me with even this, LOL. Yeah. You know, a question to ask in that kind of context, especially when it's very clear, no, there's some real issues, is to, not even that you need to do this, but sometimes it can help, is to turn the question back and say, well, how would we know if it was a problem? Because for, you know, a lot of people, it gets them thinking, because it just goes back to the kind of that worldview of, we all tend to have this idea of what a problem is, like what an abusive person is, or how an abusive person behaves, or what kind of physical health problem is an issue, and what isn't. You know, gosh, you name it, what a broken bone looks like, or what a dangerous side effect looks like. And a lot of times we would be wrong, So just because it's not within our realm of knowledge, most things are not within our realm of knowledge. Like, we all, like, the broken bone example is a good one. We all think we know, oh, I know what a broken arm looks like. Well, oh, yeah, okay. Well, only if it's at a very unnatural angle can we say, yeah, that looks like a broken arm. But unless we're, medically trained, unless we're a doctor usually and looking at an x-ray or something, we're not going to know. Like, broken arms don't always bend at a off angle, so things like that. So with like your jaw, of, okay, well, I'm having trouble chewing, I'm having trouble breathing, there's some very real issues here. Like, if this isn't a problem, then when is it a problem? Like, what does a problem, how do we know when something is a problem with this? And because I think for a lot of people, it's this idea too, and it might even be more of an unconscious thing where it's this idea of, well, other people have it worse. Like, well, I saw this one thing on the Discovery Channel and this person had no jaw. Like, that's a problem. Well, it's like, okay, well, if that's our criteria for what a problem is, for me to have like no jaw or to not be able to shut my mouth, then you kind of get that confirmation of, we're not on the same page here as far as what constitutes a problem. Because for me, not being able to breathe, not being able to chew your food properly, that's a problem. Those are two very real problems worthy of getting addressed. So yeah, just something to think about. Kind of going back to what we've kind of been talking about all night tonight, but the concept of perpetual confusion and crazy making and mental anguish, understanding that any one of those three things is a problem. And now we're talking about relationships, right? But any one of those three things is a problem worthy of potentially being a deal breaker if it doesn't get resolved. And my life radically began to improve when I got rid of feeling like I need concrete proof that there's a problem. Because what does that look like? Like, how will I know when it's a problem? Most people are like, well, I'll know it's like, most people have this idea of it's a deal breaker or it's a problem if this person hits me or if they cheat on me. Well, hits you where? Like on the leg, in the face, closed hand, open hand? What if they just yell at you? I say just in quotes. What if they start calling you names? What if they shove you? Is that a problem then? Cheating on you. What, you need to catch them in bed with the other person? What about, kind of hiding their phone or guarding their phone or disappearing for hours on end or getting defensive when you ask them where they've been or who this new person is or any of that stuff? Like, is that a problem? And so realizing, oh my gosh, here all along, I thought I had this kind of concrete understanding of what a problem was, but really it was very, very nebulous. And and I had to back up and realize, no, perpetual confusion, crazy making, or mental anguish, all of that's a problem worthy of being a deal breaker. I cannot have that in my life. It needs to get resolved or it needs to go. So that took a lot of the pressure off of trying to figure out, because especially with stuff like cheating, well, if you're not catching them in bed, well, okay, you can justify text and they can justify text and other people can, all of that behavior can be justified. But if you're constantly feeling uneasy and this crazy making and this squirrely behavior and this thing, you're just kind of constantly thinking about things and there's suspiciousness and stuff's not getting resolved and all of that, like that in itself is not a way to live. Like that in itself is a huge problem. That's enough. Like, it doesn't need to be anymore. If that can't get resolved, then that's enough. So, okay, guys, I'm going to wrap it up for tonight. It is really hot in here. I've got to turn on the AC. Thank you so much for being here. This is a live stream I'm trying to do every Wednesday night. It's kind of hit or miss depending on my anxiety. But thank you. Thank you for being here. If you would like to be notified when I do go live, you can text the words Dana Live, all one word, the number 22999. Also, if you would like some words of encouragement, I send those out every other day-ish. You can text the words I thrive, all one word, to the number 22999. And you can get those words of encouragement. And you can unsubscribe at any time. There's no cost or anything. So, yeah. So with that said, you guys, thank you so much for being here and for all of your questions and supporting each other and everything else. It's, yeah, it's really wonderful to see. So with that said, as always, just lots of love to you guys. You are not alone. You are not crazy, and you really can move forward and heal from this. So take care and have a, yes, have a peaceful evening.